Happy summer solstice. Are you enjoying this time of year where the days are the longest, when there is more light, when hopefully there is more sunlight, unless you are in the UK? And this time of year is very significant, not just because it is the longest day of the year, but because it is an opportunity to receive the highest light, the highest frequency, the highest vitality, the highest consciousness. Because the sun is the generator of pranic life force energy. This is why when we eat certain foods that are rich, that have been created, grown from that sunlight energy, they store that sunlight energy, that pranic energy, and then you eat it and it becomes part of your body. This is why when you go out in the sun, you can feel more energized, more revitalized. This is why if you are in maybe a foreign country that is more sunny, you feel fresh and awake quicker. So the sun has a direct impact on our bodies, on our consciousness. And so it is a great time to receive those higher energies, those higher frequencies of light, of illumination, of truth. And this is why the darker force wants to create more dark by trying to block out the sun. You remember that? You remember Bill Gates talking about wanting to block out the sun? This is what they want to do because they understand the power of that sunlight energy. So another thing that this darker force is doing, I would suggest, is it is creating a false light. There's a saying, isn't there, that God creates and the devil infiltrates. Or if you don't want to use the terms God or devil, good or evil, we can say that the light creates and the darkness infiltrates. And when we are speaking of darkness, really what we're talking about is that force of ignorance. And that force that wants to keep people in ignorance so that it can have the knowledge to try and wield power over those that are kept in the dark. So this dark force is creating infiltration. Maybe you can see it now on advertisements. I've been seeing it. This kind of false light, this false spirituality. In fact, I would say it is already immersed in our culture. There are many prominent figures maybe out there that are kind of advertising this superficial kind of spirituality, this false light spirituality. And there is a way that we can tell the difference between true, authentic spirituality and false spirituality. And really it is very, very simple. And that is that if it appeals to the ego, if it appeals to creating more and more limited identities, then it is of the false light. Whereas if it is appealing to the infinite spirit, if it is pointing directly to that, then it is of the greatest light. If it is pointing to being empowered, then it is of the greatest light. But if it is just there to keep you confused, going round and round in circles, in a psychological and emotional maze, then it is of the false light. You see, the false light, they don't want to, of course, encourage that connection with the infinite spirit, because it is that realization of the infinite spirit that ultimately sets one free. So a great way to tell the false light is that it is kind of encouraging, glorifying the ego. It is giving you more identities. And so a lot of it, you'll see this false spirituality, it's packaged in the way that you look, the way that you dress, the kinds of things that you say. It's more on a superficial nature, as opposed to pointing deeply to the very source of what you are. Because what is really the ego? The ego is nothing more than an imaginary limitation of what you are. that imaginary limitation of what you are, if you believe it to be true, if you believe yourself to be something finite and limited, like just a body and a mind and certain roles, then what happens is that you become bound by those things. Those become the point of limitation in which you can go no further. That imaginary limitation of self is what holds you back and is what makes you feel separate, limited. Therefore, is what makes you suffer, is what creates those self-imposed limitations where you say, I can't do that. That's not possible. What if this happens? I can't let go of this. I can't lose this. These are all just imaginary limitations. And so this false light spirituality, I would suggest, will be encouraging the ego. It will be encouraging those imaginary limitations. They will just be repackaged in a different way, that's all. And we can really look at this if we think of religions of the past. You know, each control system has had its own kind of way, and it has evolved over time. It has been used throughout history by what I call this archonic force. The word archon just means ruler, but these rulers are not just part of mankind. I would suggest they are a force that is outside the range of mankind. Maybe an off-world force, or maybe an interdimensional force in nature. And they have disconnected themselves from the source. They have no connection to the source of all energy, all fulfillment. And so what they do is they feed on other people's energy. They are like a vampire. And so they seek to use mankind as a food source, as an energy source, for resources, but also to take and suck that energy from those beings that are trapped in the illusion. So their whole game and the creation of this society is to keep you trapped in the illusion. One of those control tools of the past was religion. Religion was used as a kind of false spirituality to keep you away from the source of your nature. And the way that they did this is they said you can only go to the source through an intermediary, through a book or through a priest. Not that you can go directly to the source within you. And so now religion, because society is changing, it is becoming more obsolete. The programming of religion is wearing off. It's not as strong as it was. And so the control system, it moves and it adapts with the times. And so the way that it is moving and adapting now is it is moving more towards science, or so-called science, or funded science, and atheism as a way to control. This idea that there is nothing but just pure materialism. That's it. But if this begins to wear off, then I would suggest that the last-ditch effort is to then create a kind of false spirituality, a New Age spirituality. And this is something that even the United Nations, which really is part of this archonic force that is trying to create this one world system, a centralized system that can be controlled from a central source. Even they are promoting a kind of New Age religion, a New Age spirituality. And it will take a very discerning eye, someone that is very astute spiritually, to be able to see the difference, to see whether it is subtly appealing to the ego, to that imaginary limitation of self, or whether it is something that is authentic and pointing you back to your infinitely free and boundless nature. Is it something that is empowering you? Is it something that is there to set you free? Or is it just another kind of imprisonment? And this force, some people may say, why doesn't this archonic force, if it is extraterrestrial, if it is interdimensional, why does it not just come and maybe take over in some way? And the truth is that the whole of life is based on consent. This is one of the universal laws. But also, it is because a prison that you can see, a prison that you know that you are in, which is taken by force, well, you can fight against that prison because you can see it is a prison. And that kind of prison has a finite life to it. There will always eventually be a kind of revolution. But the prison that you cannot see, the prison that you maybe even think is freedom, then you will not even try to break free. And so this is the greatest kind of prison. And so they stay behind the scenes while they have created this system that seems to be freedom, but is really enslavement. And we know that this global plan, the Great Reset, is to say that you will own nothing and be happy. But the question is, will everyone truly own nothing, or will there be a certain kind of elite that are working with this archonic force that will own everything? And then when you have potentially a system where everybody is plugged into that system through digital IDs, maybe even through artificial intelligence, technology, human augmentation, chips in the brain, chips in the body, technology in the body. Once you have a full system that is based on technology and artificial intelligence in which everybody is tied into that, well, now you can control the whole globe, the whole of mankind from that central source. And so what if this archonic force, which was talked about by many of the ancient traditions, including the pre-Christian Gnostics, they have spoken about this force, so it's not a foreign concept. What if this force is slowly, over time, infiltrating this civilization, this planet, so that eventually everything is plugged into that technology and then it can be controlled from that central source of artificial intelligence? Because this archonic force, I would suggest, is inorganic in nature. It is very heavily intertwined with technology. Technology is, in a sense, it's God. So, could it be that all of the plans to create this centralized technological digital system is so that it all can be controlled from a central source, so that ultimately the whole of mankind can be harvested for energy? What if there is this force that does this throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe? It goes from planet to planet, and its aim is to slowly infiltrate and begin to harvest all of their energy. You see, I can see this at the source, because when you look at the nature of the universe, there is this battle, isn't there, between the different kinds of energy, between the creative force and the destructive force. It is within all of us. It is within all of creation. So why is it so far-fetched to think that there is a force that is more of a representation of that? It is playing its part. It is playing its job in the universe. But in a universe that is based on consent as one of the natural laws, in which it is dependent upon one's will, nothing is ultimately forced. Everything is a choice. So, in other words, mankind could be slowly enslaving itself through choosing that unknowingly, right? In other words, they are consenting to it. They're allowing it to happen. I mean, look around and look at how people are already so transfixed, mesmerized by technology as it is. How the overstimulation of technology is controlling so many people. Looking for that next dopamine hit. see if somebody's looked at your post and liked it, see if somebody's commented. And it all really comes from this deep sense of hope that people have, which I would suggest is coming from conditioning, actually, from programming, in which people are hoping for something better. They go on social media because they're hoping for something better. They're hoping for something more in their life, some more meaning, some more excitement, some more thrills, maybe. So it can be a trap. And if you've got that technology ramped up, where there's so much stimulus, so much information coming in, what happens is one starts to go from being conscious and responsive to being compulsive and reactive, to being unconscious in nature. The whole sales pitch of artificial intelligence and human augmentation is that you'll become superhuman, when actually, I would say you will become subhuman. Because if people are not conscious, if they don't even have mastery over their own self, over their own body, then what's going to happen when you start to introduce artificial intelligence, where there is another form of intelligence within you that is also functioning? That's adding another form of activity to the body, to the mind, that you have to be conscious of, that you have to be able to have some discipline over, otherwise it is going to take you over, right? So this concept of a hive mind, this concept of a collective mind is not unusual, is it? And so I would suggest this is part of this false light. It is to pacify people from the great awakening that is taking place right now, and to try and steer it in a different direction. Again, the light creates, the darkness infiltrates, because it has no creativity of its own. So it is always trying to steer it in the direction that is most beneficial for it. And what is most beneficial for this archonic force, being that mankind is a food source for it, is to keep mankind in a system in which their energy can be harvested. It is not in their interest to be free. No society wants you to be truly free. No society wants you to be truly empowered. This archonic force certainly doesn't want that. And many of the global leaders, I would suggest, are in league with this archonic force. They have sold, in a sense, their souls, right, to this archonic force for short-term power and gain for themselves. And this false light is, I would suggest, going to be a great part of this. So something to watch out for, something to be aware of. You're going to see it, I would suggest, more and more on advertisements. You're going to see it more with celebrities, with musicians, in films. And to the undiscerning eye, it might even look almost identical. Maybe it will still be talking about kind of Eastern teachings. But the real key is to see whether it appeals to the ego, whether it keeps you in a limited identity, or whether it is there to truly set you free. So, I love you all. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy the summer solstice. Receive the highest light, the highest frequency, the highest vitality, the highest consciousness. I love you all, and as always, enjoy the ride.